is happening, fellow fantasy GMs? I am JJ Wang. He is the bearded one, DJ Dove. And with our powers combined, we are the Fantasy Couriers.
Okay, here we are. Champions Month continued. JJ Wang. We have a guest this week. I got some guests lined up for next week. You're not going to be happy about them because we're going to have to meet with them after hours. We have a husband and wife duo coming up, but they have little kids who don't go to bed till 8. So that's coming up soon. But we're gonna bask in the glory of what we have today. But before we get into introducing our guests, how's it going, JJ Wang?
It's going good. I mean, this nice weather this last couple of days. Well, it's starting to rain now, but the last not nice weather reminds me of the middle of summertime. I've been feeling a little energetic. I've been getting into fantasy a little more, but then, then the bad weather comes back in. You're like, it's just not the same.
Yeah, I'm a snow guy, so I've loved having the snow we had 2 days of snow the other week.
Oh, don't get me wrong. When I like the snow. When I see the snow, it just automatically means I got to be lazy and not do anything. But when I see the bright sun, I'm just like, oh, now I can go do something.
Yeah, and those of us that are teachers, we can't go to work. We don't live in the good state of Indiana where you go to. Don't you all go to school? Rain, snow, sleet, hail. You need about 20 feet of snow to go. Or are y'all lucky?
It used to be like that. Now they're getting e-learning days. They're like,
Oh,
nah, we're not going to deal with it today.
uh,
E-learning day.
that's a hot mess. Like our school decided not to. But anyway, yeah, there's our guest down there is Jared. He was on 2 summers ago as part of our bold predictions show. We connected when Fantasy Couriers took over the Skull King Facebook page. Jared's become a good bud. We'll message every now and then, although I'm kind of mad at him because his team got lucky and beat me and got me kicked out of the playoff in our dynasty league on this. Man, my team, I don't know what happened there. That was a team that pooped the bed, but I'm still a little bitter. You got lucky, dude. Just dagnabbit. Anyway, so but Jared is the inaugural champion, and he wins the biggest prize that we give out from the Couriers, a guest spot on the show, for donating to charity from the Fantasy Couriers Outrageous League. It's a ridiculous league, had 14 teams. Every team donated $25 to the Wholehearted Foundation. If you want to donate, it's www.wholeheartedfoundation.org. Great organization to help children who need heart surgery. It's just awesome. But we hooked them up. One guy actually gave a bigger donation. I'm like, man, I wish I had that money. But call out to Bill. He's a rock star. But this league was wild. You had to start 2 quarterbacks, and you could start a super flex. You started 2 tight ends. Passing touchdowns were 5. There were points for completions, interceptions. Everything was the same there. There were super bonuses for if you had like long passes, if you had short for distance passes, distance touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns were 6. Most other things was normal, but tight ends were where everything was. Tight ends and kickers. Kickers were ridiculous. They got up to 5 points, but they got 3 points for PATs, which gave kickers a little bit of value as we were going through that. Receivers were a little bit down. They got 1 point for 7 yards just to make it weird. I just wanted to mess with things. They got something that teams should think about. We do PPR, but they also got quarter point for first down. Some teams are going to point per first down, so you're not getting these dinky, receptions for -2 yards. You still get half a point for a guy stinking. But yeah, so the rules were bonky. Scores were super duper high. Teams somehow ended up being better than we thought they would be, and it was a good year. But Jared came out the champion of the inaugural league. Thanks for donating. Thanks for being part of the league. So as we get in now, champ, tell us about your fantasy background and maybe your favorite fantasy player of all time. Go for it.
Yeah, I got started in fantasy football. I had a cousin who had reached out to me to play. Never knew anything about it. Had heard of other people playing before, but I said, sure, why not? So I played in that a couple years, and then he got me to take over the league, which I took it over, turned it into a 14-man league. A few years later, I started up another keeper league. But yeah, I kind of been commissioning a league or two for the last about 12 years. Probably like my favorite player, one who probably got me to a championship was Todd Gurley back in his glory days. He was awesome. He was awesome.
Yeah, guys like Todd Gurley. I mean, it's crazy how they're just so dominant. They just completely fall off a cliff. But as a fantasy player, I mean, he's one of the greatest fantasy players of all. I mean, fantasy assets of all time. I mean, the guy was just dominant for was it 3 years? I mean, 3 years he was the best running back.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you realize that only by about 26 points were you able because you beat me in the championship, dagnabbit. So team guys on his team were Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, your boy, who had like a dud week, Zamir White. This was the CD Lamb bonkers week in this league because of scoring. CD Lamb got 71.25 points, and then he had duds at tight end. But then Brandon Cooks, Jalen Warren, Nico Collins, McCaffrey, and then the genius play of Tyrod Taylor for 41.57 in the championship game. And Moody was your kicker. There's a championship squad right there. The tight ends that pooped the bed were Jonnu Smith, who got 0, and Kate Otten got 5.6, which to get 5.6 in this league, that's like tie your shoes and walk onto the field. So that was there's your squad, dude. You rolled it.
Yeah, I kind of punted on tight end a little bit.
Me too.
Um, but I'm still disappointed because I had Mike Williams who got hurt, and I had Nick Chubb who got hurt.
Yeah,
Um,
you're a Williams truther. You might be the last of the dying breed. Are you still?
eh, that thought process is going to be changing coming up in this season.
Or
I
is
can
it
tell you
just because
that.
of Herbert? You're a Herbert guy. Is that what it is?
I do like Herbert, but I do like Mike Williams. It's going to be interesting to see what they do now with Harbaugh and Eckler being older, how they're going to transition, yeah, just their whole offensive scheme. So I'm
Isaiah,
curious about it.
Isaiah Spiller. Isaiah Spiller.
Yeah, keep
Not
praying.
happening. Too late. So this week, as we were looking at going through the January is pretty much the month that was. We reflect on sort of the season and we start to look forward. So this is the starting to look forward show we're going to have. This week's theme is guys we're looking to acquire in the offseason. All three of us are dynasty guys. That's what I do with Jared's a dynasty league. Dynasty is it's got to be king soon, right? Because NFL is so big. A lot of people still don't know about it. I guess I'm just such a nerd that all my friends are nerdy into Dynasty, but we need more people just to love it.
I mean, you need more people to love it, but I don't think it can ever be king. Just because I mean
Family league.
the season long fantasy is just convenient to your average person. And your average person, there's more of those than there are of your dedicated. So it can never be king, but it's
So,
close.
so if we get rid of family leagues, then we're okay, and Dynasty will be king. That's
Yeah, maybe. Get rid of all families.
So
No more
your
family
wife
leagues.
and kids are no longer playing, and there would be a special guest here for the other charity league, which is a best ball league, and a couple guys from mine and Jared's other league got into that one as well, and that was my daughter. My 13-year-old daughter who drafted her team and didn't look at it until the end of the season. She best balled it out and just drafted well, and her team was named after Taylor Swift before her and Kelsey were dating, and she had Travis Kelsey, which is kind of hilarious. But congratulations, sweetheart. So let's get into that. We're going to talk about guys we're looking to acquire in the offseason, talking about why we're looking at those guys. What's the reason we want those guys? I mean, maybe it's because they're good, usually. And what are you willing to give up? So we'll just sort of look at all those kind of aspects. There's a lot of questions for a couple guys. We'll see how many we get over this little chunk of time, and we'll just sort of bust other chops. So, Champ, how about you take one of your guys? We're not worried about positions. If you want to jump around, we'll hit guys. Name a guy that you are looking to acquire in the offseason and Protificate? What's that word? Talk about him.
All right. I sent you a list of players. I got a couple highlighted who guys that I would love to have on my team, but my other guys are kind of guys who I wouldn't mind getting if I can get them on the cheap. But one I'm kind of interested about right now would be Zamir White. With the whole Josh Jacobs, we don't know what his future holds, where he's going to be at next year. But it's kind of looking at Zamir White, and he balled out at the end of the season. Um, like I said, he's a young back. I'd really be interested in obtaining him.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I like where you're going with that. I mean, it's very interesting. I think Zamir White would be a little harder to obtain. Depends on how much you want to give up. I think you're probably. I mean, especially since the way he finished the end of the season, was spectacular. That's what we kind of been waiting for. Don't see Josh Jacobs coming back because he was on the franchise tag. I think Zamir White kind of took that position as going into next season as the number one running back. But I think you're gonna have to pay up for him. I mean, the way it ended, and the fact that he will be an RB1, well, at least for his team. I mean, I think you're looking at least probably a first round pick. Now, if you're willing to give that up, you're a contender. I mean, I would be interested if it's a little later in the first round, but I can't see giving up like a mid first round for him because I think you could probably find another running back, especially the way the landscape of the running backs is. But yeah, I would if I could find somebody that'd be interested in giving up on Zamir White. We're not giving up, but giving him away, definitely 100%. I'm on board with that.
Oh,
So you think a first round would take it?
I think it was that's the least it would take. I don't expect because especially now, I think he's got the full workload, and people see that. And full workload running backs are very hard to come by. And I think you at this point in the season, you're looking to stockpile running backs. I think that's the least it would take.
Oh, I'm on the Zamir White train with you. We'll have to ask Raph what he's willing to take for him. That
I already sent out a message to him this morning.
But yeah, I mean, but see, I'm on the other side up until draft day, draft picks. You're going to draft Trey Lance, who is the 17th string quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, or you're going to get Zamir White for your first round pick, who is stepping into the lead back. I'll take Zamir White all day, and I'll cry. I'll be sitting there. I'll be texting you all during, hey, you want to trade on draft day? But come September, I feel better again. So it's a double-edged sword. I have very few first-round picks. Like in the league I am with Jared, I gave away all my picks for Mark Andrews, who just had to hurt himself and boot me out of the playoffs. In some of the leagues I'm in with JJ, I have a couple first picks, but in one league I don't have picks for like 3 years because I paid for guys because my brother taught me. He said, better get guys that you know are going to play well. Don't overpay, but you never know. You're going to hit some. I hit on my Amon Ra. I had Nico Collins, who I got on the cheap on a bunch of leagues, but I would pay for him. I'd say, I wouldn't pay like 2 firsts. If you can get him for a first, not like the number 1 pick because that value is too high. I think you're right on that, JJ. But I'd give up a first, probably mid to late, because just figure out where draft's falling. Like, find the Marvin Harrison line is what I'm looking at, and go from there and see where people land. But yeah, I love me some Zamir White. I think you're on to something now. Speaking of young running backs, Tennessee used to be the Derrick Henry show. Does anybody here think he's back in Tennessee next year?
Go ahead, Jared. Let you take that one.
If I had to say yes or no right now, I'd probably say no. But I just saw a report that came out with the new head coaching hiring there in Tennessee, who said if they could make it work and fit him into their scheme, they'd love to have him back.
Yeah,
but I think the time now is if you can get anything for him, you got to get rid of him, I think.
I think that's a pretty good take there. He did kind of give his thank you to the city speech at the end of the game, so I think he kind of knows it's time to move on. That's fine. You're Derrick Henry. You can go somewhere else, maybe to a better team, and you're still Derrick Henry. It's not like you're Dalvin Cook. I think Derrick Henry will definitely has a better season than Dalvin Cook had this year going to a new team. He might not have like the old school Derrick Henry, but hey, that's fine. But I don't think he's there, and I think Tajay Spears. That's the guy you was going to bring up, correct?
Yes. I wrote Sharp. I'm losing my mind today. Yeah, Tajay.
Yeah.
Spears.
So I'll let you go ahead and say your deal with him before I.
Oh no, go on with him. We're going down that rabbit hole. That's where I want to go.
So we got Tajay Spears, and I think this guy. I think he's on the same wavelength as Zamir White. Because he's going to go if Derrick Henry does go. Just like Josh Jacobs, if they do go, I think he proved throughout the season that he has that big that big play potential. And I think you're going to have to pay up. I think you may have to pay a little more for Tajay Spears than you do for Zamir White, just because of the flashiness, I think. I mean, I think those splash plays, I think the fact that he's a better receiver than Zamir White, I think it might make you have to pay up a little more. I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, it's going to take it's still going to take first round picks if you want him, because he's going to be an RB1 for a team, and like same thing. You've got to have that, and that's hard to get rid of. So I mean, I think you're gonna have to go hard at other fantasy managers if you want to take a guy like that coming off. I don't want to say an impressive season, but a season you can look forward. A season you can build on.
I like with him, and I'm to me, I think Zamir White. They could be You're right, and they could be similar. I think Zamir White has more. He's sexier because he had those last 4 games where he balled out. Tajay Spears was involved throughout the year. He had one 75-yard rushing game and one 89-yard receiving game, but everything else was sort of less than 50, 60-yard lower. But he had the catches.
To be fair, he was playing behind Derrick Henry.
Yeah, but nobody's going to nerd out like us and go looking through the year like, oh, Tajay Spears had 400, 300 yards, but he didn't end the year like crazy, not crazy. So I think you can get him cheaper. So if they're all fair in game there, I bet you can get him cheaper depending upon the owner and if you don't live in Tennessee. What do you think there, Jared?
I mean, Tajay Spears, he's worth a pickup, and to acquire him if you can. He's young. I think he's got a little bit of knock on his medical degenerative knee thing, so that's you got to throw a little caution there. But I mean, I didn't see a bunch of Tennessee games, but the highlights and stuff, he has some speed and some bursts, which is nice.
So, to be fair to Tajay Spears, talking of the medical industry, and it's not like Zamir White is free of all medical. He did
NFL running backs though too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did have some knee issues as well. I could be wrong on that. I think. So that, like, again, all running backs seem to have knee issues, and they can all break down at any moment. But I think those two running backs are very, very equal.
Well, I think you could bring that up. If you're looking to acquire him, you could bring that up and maybe try to lower his price a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
JJ, you liking our guys? You want to throw a guy, or do you want us to throw some?
Okay, so I'll throw in a guy. I think I'll throw. So I took a different approach. I think I took an approach of a guy that I can pay less for, that I actually could acquire.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to stack running backs, just for later in the season, because you need as many as possible. And I'm going to Chicago, and I'm going to pick one of their running backs here. So you got Rashawn Johnson, who was the rookie, didn't do a whole lot, but I'm going to go with Khalil Herbert. When Khalil Herbert played, the only stat that I'll bring up that I was kind of impressed with. So when Khalil Herbert played more than 50% of the snaps, which was only 6 games, he was a top 10 running back in 3 of those games. And he did miss 5 games, so I think that hurts a lot too. So, I mean, he was splitting carries with 3 other running backs. If they do get rid of Justin Fields, bring in a rookie, I think they will lean on the running game even more. And I think Khalil Herbert, as long as he stays healthy, can remain as that RB1 in a committee role. And I think as a low-end RB2 or a flex spot that can really help your team as an alternate running back, I think you can get him on the cheap too. I mean, I think maybe a late second round, possibly, maybe.
I don't know, man. I think he'll still be a little pricey because he has 3 games over 100 yards, and the way you'll cheap him is dude's going to be 26 this year.
Yep.
So he's going to be on the low, and as you were saying it, as you're talking, I was like, man, if Justin Fields isn't there, boom, Justin Fields is there. This conversation is hit or miss. He's going to be a dart throw for a week as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we all know what us in Virginia pay attention to Virginia Tech running backs. They usually have they make you happy at one point and then they poop the bed for the rest of their career. But yeah, I think it's going to be a committee there. But the interesting thing was when he played generally. Like, they didn't go committee. They didn't say, "Hey, Roshan, there." I mean, they go, "Oh, wait, Roshan, you weren't good enough to be a starter in college. You were behind that guy who can't play for the Falcons. So, you're not gonna play for us." But yeah, I think if Fields is there, I think the situation changes. But I think if you want to get him, you've got to get him before the whole Fields mess comes out, because everybody's going to say, "Oh, Fields is leave. Fields is that." The price will fluctuate. The price will go up when Fields is for sure gone. So you can bank on maybe Fields staying. What's Chicagoland thinking of Khalil Herbert?
I don't know. I think it's hard to kind of I was talking with my brother earlier, and Cleo Herbert, I think he's still got one more year there. Roshan, they drafted him last year. I think he did all right. Um, so I think they're going to go into the season probably with those two guys as their, number one, number two. But I don't know. Like, to me, like I said earlier, it's all what you have to give up to acquire him. I don't think it would take a whole bunch.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I don't think it would either, because I think people are going to lean more towards Roshan Johnson being the younger guy and being the bigger guy, maybe scoring those touchdowns. And I think he could maybe surprise some people. Surprise what
But
people
this would take probably a team that's in a win now more so than a rebuild.
Yeah.
Rebuild,
yeah,
probably try to get a Roshan win now, or possibility of a playoff run team, go for Khalil.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to acquire Khalil if I'm the worst team in the league, but you need running backs, man.
Yeah. So okay, Jared, who's your next guy?
Let's see. I think I'm gonna jump right to it. I mean, if I could, I'd love to get Jordan Love, I think. Um, again, the whole thing is what is it gonna take to acquire these guys? And I'm kind of an old cheapskate. I don't want to give up a bunch of stuff, but you know what? Look what he's done this year. He went in there as a question mark. They drafted some great receivers around him, and he has settled down and balled out. So I mean, he's young. I think they're going to resign him or extend him or whatever. But
Two,
he's definitely
3 first rounders. What's he going to cost? At least 2 first rounders in Superflex League.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take at least 2 first round. I mean, he proved. I mean, he's going to get the extension. I mean, you got to give him the money. He played great at the end. Played pretty bad in the beginning of the season. Came on late, so you got to be careful with that too. A lot of times, players play bad, then they play good, and it entices you, and then they come out the next season and they end up stinking. But yeah, from right now, I mean, you're going to have to pay up, and it's tough. But I mean, if you're a quarterback away, I mean, all you need, you're in a super flex, and you're a quarterback away. You think all you need is that secondary quarterback. Why not give up at least 2 first round picks? I mean, I think it makes complete sense, because you're going to need that quarterback. I think Jordan Love is a perfect QB2, for any team. QB1, I mean, it's still out there. Jury's still out. It's possible, but one of the more solid QB2s, like quarterback away, why not give up what you just need to give up? That's all it's what's about, winning a championship. And if you're that close, you've got to throw your eggs in the basket at some point and go win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, if you're paying 2 first, I'm not paying 2 first for a QB2. Not at all. That QB2 you can get off of the scrap heap. That would be like you picking up Baker last year. Like, I think Jordan Love could. I mean, we haven't looked at offseason rankings, but he's probably in rankings for Dynasty going to fall 7, 6, 7, 8. I think right good for.
I don't know if I feel comfortable going into the season as Jordan Love as my QB1. Just coming off, he's had half of a good season. So half of the season was good, half of the season was not. If I'm trying to win a championship, I don't know if I want Jordan Love as my QB1 to start out with. That's all. I mean, he can finish as a QB1, not denying that, but I feel more comfortable with a bunch of other guys as a QB1, and then Jordan Love just on the verge because you need two good quarterbacks, and I think Jordan Love is very good, but I'm not willing to sacrifice, say he's my QB1 yet if I'm trying to win a championship.
Jordan Love or Tua?
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love or Justin Herbert?
I will still take Herbert, especially with Harbaugh coming in. Just because, because Herbert has been that guy for several years. I'm not a huge fan, but I have seen Herbert do it, and I'm still confident with Harbaugh coming in. I'd like to see where that could go.
Jordan Love. I'm trying to go. Jordan Love. We're talking QB2s. One season of Aaron Rodgers if you're going for a win.
I'd probably go Jordan Love there.
Okay. Matthew Stafford was the number 6 QBR quarterback. Matthew Stafford, Jordan Love.
I'll go. I think I'll go Jordan Love there too.
Dak.
I would definitely go Jordan Love there. I will take
Jordan Love like in your top 6 right here.
I'm not. Yeah, but you're looking at the way these. I don't feel comfortable with Matt Stafford as my QB1 either. Matthew Stafford.
Those receivers, I love it. I love that.
Is the QB2. I don't feel comfortable with Dak Prescott as a QB1. I don't feel comfortable with Tua as a QB1. I do feel comfortable with Herbert as a QB1.
Lamar, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and I think I would take all those guys, and so that makes Jordan Love lower, on the verge of becoming that QB1 guy.
I see you're going there. Yeah, I think it'd be really good. Like if you're a top of tier team with all the pieces, you're nervous with him as your QB1. If you're that like team that you're looking, you're like, I'm either going to make or miss the playoffs. Maybe you shoot your shot for him to be your QB1, otherwise QB2. What do you think of those, Jared? Is that sort of your thoughts, or?
No, I was just gonna say just one question. So Brock Purdy or Jordan Love? I'm curious.
I would take Brock Purdy just because I'm a 49ers fan and I play with my emotions more than Brock Purdy's helped me out a lot more than Jordan Love has. And Brock Purdy's the last guy in the draft, just a better story. But I like the 49ers offense better than the Packers offense. So I would go Brock Purdy.
And I will say one other thing. Jordan Love's going to end up being a Hall of Famer.
Possibly.
He's a Green Bay.
Because of Green Bay, yes.
And it's very possible Brock Purdy is a Hall of Famer because he's with Kyle Shanahan. So, both of these guys, it can end up being Hall of Fame players. It sounds crazy, but you never know.
This is why nobody listens to our show. You know that, right? I got one that's a little off the reservation, but it's more of an eye test from watching games. If you listen to us throughout the years, everybody, I've been on the Baker train this year. Love me some Baker coming back as resurgence, and that's why my team actually in the league that Jared won, I just lost the name, was named after Baker Mayfield. It was I was called Baker's. I lost the name. Damn it! What was that called?
Baker's Gang.
Baker's Gang. There we go. Yeah, that was called Baker's Gang. And Mike Evans was the only guy he threw to this year. Mike Evans and then Rachaad White if he had to dump it off. Mike Evans might not be a Buccaneer next year. I think they'd be stupid not to, but they got to decide on finances. But there was a kid this year, and he was a rookie, and his name was Trey Palmer. And every now and then you would see Trey Palmer pop in. He's 6 foot, $192, so he's not giant, but he was getting noticed at times by Baker where he had a 6-target game, a couple 6, 5, 4, a 7-target game. He had a couple of duds, but getting that notice as a rookie who was not highly touted, wasn't expected to be anything overall. He's a, what is he? I lost track here. A 6th-round pick. But he was getting playing time for the Bucs on a team they made the playoffs for crying out loud somehow. Baker's going to be re-signed unless they decide to, I don't know. Baker's going to be a Buccaneer. And he likes this guy. Unless this is all hedging on Mike Evans' numbers. This is my left field one. But Trey Palmer is a guy you get really cheap because most people don't even know who I'm talking about right now. He only had 385 yards on 39 receptions and 3 touchdowns this year. So nothing to write home about, but a guy to keep an eye on. He did have 68 targets on that offense, where Mike Evans had the other 7,412.
Yeah, I guess it's worth keeping an eye on. I think it's not. It's. I don't think it also hinges more. I'm not gonna say I've totally messed all that up, but yeah, it hinges on Mike Evans, but it also hinges on whether or not you believe what you saw in Baker Mayfield this year. If you think Baker Mayfield can continue what he's doing now, then maybe Trey Palmer can be more than just a guy. I think he has possibility. I mean, no doubt about that. Like I said, a lot of people don't know who he is. He's definitely a guy that you could get for cheap. You could probably get him almost for free as a throw-in for something if you wanted to.
I went your
But
route.
yeah, so I mean, it's possible. I mean, you got to trust in what Baker's doing, and I think that's still very, very iffy.
Would you pick up Trey Palmer there, Jared?
He's a dart throw. I mean,
Oh yeah,
like you
totally.
said, it hinges on Mike Evans. If Evans is back, then you're not going to acquire him. But we won't know that until what, beginning of March or something.
Unless they start. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I'll go ahead,
I was
Jared.
just going to say Baker. I think Baker he played great this year. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely someone to keep an eye on.
Okay, so I'll throw out a guy that's similar to Trey Palmer. I think is in a much better situation. Well, I don't think I know he's in a much better situation, and that's Khalil Shakir in Buffalo. There's been a lot of talk lately that Stephon Diggs isn't happy. There's been some, hey, is Stephon Diggs leaving? So there's a possibility there. So that gets rid of the number one receiver. There's Gabe Davis. I know we all love Gabe Davis, but we all know what Gabe Davis is. He completely disappears. And you still got Josh Allen throwing for a whole bunch of yards. And Kaliska didn't have a great year, but he had some spots where he looked impressive. And I think going into next year, if he can be that number one wide receiver or number two wide receiver of that offense, which I think he's at least earned an opportunity to get, I think there's real possibility that Shakir can be, a fanny producer next year.
Oh, go for this. This one's a softball to me. What do you think, Jared?
I'm with JJ here. I'd rather have Shakir. The Bucks could easily draft another wide receiver to take Trey Palmer's place. But
Yeah, he came on this year. He looked like someone. I mean, in the game against Kansas City, he had 9 targets. He only had 44 yards on 7 receptions, but he had 9 targets, meaning that Josh Allen knows he exists. I think the Palmer throwout was more of it. And by the way, just to back it up, I just picked up Trey Palmer in a league. Trust the process. I just got Trey Palmer. You saw it pop up, JJ. We'll have that champ on next couple weeks, but he had 9 stinking targets. That was his highest targets of the year, and they were all short passes because it was that Kansas City Buffalo game. But he's got the attention of Josh Allen. Apparently, Gabe Davis, who was supposed to have the greatest season of the year, and we loved him on the Couriers. So basically, if there's a guy you want us to have a bad year, Jared, just tell us, and he'll be the guy we support next summer. So far, we are hitting some duds as a whole collabo love. Like each of us have some guys that we've loved. This year, it was my Puka train, but yeah, Shakir. But I think, what do you think Shakir's going to cost? Because he's not a I mean, he had 600 yards and 2 touchdowns, so he had as many catches. Can you believe this? He had the same amount of catches as Trey Palmer, but 200 more yards because he's their Deshaun Jackson. So what he cost, and or what would you pay for him? And by the way, Khalil Shakir, happy birthday next week.
So honestly, I'd get anything that's not a first round pick. So if I'm in a 12-team league, I'd give the 2-1 for him, because at that point the 2-1, they're pretty much, I don't want to say they're dart throws anyway, but at least Khalil Shakir is in that offense and has earned Josh Allen's trust, and he can help you right away. And if you're taking, because let's be honest, if you're looking for a wide receiver and you're setting at 2-1, you're already looking at probably the 6th or 7th best wide receiver in the draft anyway. So why not take a shot on Shakir, who has at least seen, offensive production in the NFL?
Yep. I thought Deontay Hardy was going to take that role this year, but
So can bring up one more guy. I
I
know
was going
you
to
got
say,
him. You
let's
got
do
him on your.
go
You
through
got
and
him.
each of us throw in a guy or two real quick. We'll do a speed round. You take your
Okay.
guy. No, no. You told me you don't want the show too long. JJ Wang,
Well,
show us your guy. Who's your
you
guy? Is
just
it the
say
guy we all three have?
you just said you were mentioned to go about 6 more guys. That's going to make a long show.
Oh no, I'll say one guy, one sentence. Say your guy. Who's your guy?
Well, I was going to just mention Luke Musgrave and Tyler Kraft as the tight ends. If you look at the seasons both of these guys have had, um, Tyler Kraft didn't play in the beginning because Musgrave was playing pretty well. Musgrave gets hurt, and Tyler Kraft comes in, and he plays pretty well. So you're looking to go along with those young wide receivers. These guys have two very good young tight ends, and I'm looking to acquire both of these guys if I can. I think Musgrave will be a little more expensive just because the draft capital is a little higher. So I think I might look at Kraft. But what's your thought on the tight end situation in Green Bay?
What do you got there, NFC Central?
Um, I think I liked how they utilized the tight end position this year. When Musgrave was healthy, he was getting some looks, especially as a rookie, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then when he went down, they said, Tucker Kraft, get over here. You're going to be our guy. And he got looks. But I'm with you, JJ. I mean, again, it all depends on what you can acquire him for. Um, would you give him up a second round in a super flex tight end premium?
I mean, I think I'd probably give up a second round for Kraft. I think Musgrave still holds like a first round pick, especially in a tight end premium, because I still think he's going to get the number one shot. I mean, I think he's still like that number one receiving tight end who you probably want on your team. I think, but I mean, yeah, that's at least a second round for Kraft. I mean, you're throwing away second rounders anyway. I mean, but don't be surprised if the owner is probably asking for a little more just because he knows the upside's there.
Depends on the owner. Like Musgrave was one of my guys, and I
Yeah,
had him there, and I said, I'm looking at the numbers. He had an 8 target game as a rookie tight end,
yeah.
and Kraft stepped in. They started throwing to him. So if Musgrave's the one, yeah. I mean, you might be able to get. I think you might in some leagues you might get him for a 2 because somebody's gonna be mad because he got hurt and they won't be paying attention. So do it now before people start talking a lot about it. Or if you're listening to this show, trade him to us for a second before you think about that. He should be worth a first. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this definitely all hinges on if you can get the owner, not paying attention. Yeah, I mean, if you can sucker an owner for, but I think the owner pays at least a little bit of attention, especially if they're in the tight end premium. I'd hope they would hold Luke Musgrave a little higher than that. I would hope, especially since they drafted him, probably, right?
yeah. Waiver wire depends on some fodder. Who knows? Okay, real quickly, go around, give one or two guys. You got like 1 minute each. One or two guys you had on your list we didn't talk about, and one sentence why you want that guy or what you pay for him. Go for it, Jared. Give us two guys that you might have had that we didn't highlight.
Um, I think seeing what happened here towards the end of the year, got a great young quarterback. Um, I'd love to get Nico Collins. Um, Watching him, what he did that what was it against the Ravens in that
Everybody.
playoff game? He was a beast. He's a big guy. Um, I think did he catch like, yeah, he's gonna cost you. Um, so I mean, I'd probably give up like a first and maybe a late second or something. I think for him. I mean, what's your
Yeah,
thoughts on what it would take?
I think it would take way more than that because Nico Collins is going to be everybody's number one on a rebuilding team and a championship team. So it's going to be really, really hard to get rid of, especially in that offense.
Any other guys, real quick, Jared, as we close out? You got? I got the one guy we
Um,
both had.
oh, Rashi Rice.
She Rice, yeah.
Yeah. I drafted him last year with my second round pick because I'm like, let's get a guy who's connected with Mahomes, and uh, he has really come through this second half of this past season. He looks really good, and they're trusting him. Um, yeah, I mean, he's a good young player. If you can get them, get them. But again, like JJ, it's going to cost you a little bit.
I will say he is. I think he will be more attainable than Nico Collins. So I mean,
I agree.
if you're trying to choose and you don't want to pay a whole bunch, I think Rice is definitely the cheaper. It sounds crazy being in the Patrick Mahomes offense, but I think Rice would be the cheaper option there. I like both of those. I love both of those guys. Like
Yep.
so, yeah.
Yeah, right. Rice is my other one. Just seeing the way he ended, and if there's never really been a one other than Tyreek for Patrick Mahomes, so go for him. My other guy was Brees Hall. You'd pay up for him. I don't have any Breeses, so I went with the idea of guys I don't have. But I think he's gonna be close to being my RB1, RB2 in Dynasty. But you'd have to pay the brains out of it and be on a win now team.
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers coming back.
Yeah, the only way you're getting Brees Hall is on a team that is not contending. So that's going to be, and you're going to have to pay a lot because probably the guys that aren't contending, they're going to be selling him for a reason to get as many draft picks as possible. And Brees Hall is a top 3 running back coming into this year, and that's a hefty, hefty price tag.
Yep. Who you got? That's all I got left. You all hit a bunch. You hit my guys early. You both got my guys there at the end, and I'll pick a Chargers wide receiver. Somebody's got to catch. Quentin Johnson, I'm not a fan of, but he's going to be there. Palmer can't stay healthy. Pick a Chargers wide receiver because he's got to throw to somebody. So anybody to close out, JJ?
That was all the guys I had. I don't have any more.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for having us. Thank you for being on our show, Jared. Hopefully next year I only have you on here as a friend, and I don't have to give you any more of my money in our other leagues. You can win charity leagues because that means we're helping people. I'll give you that one. Yeah. But thanks for being on here, brother. And JJ Wang, give us some wisdom as we close out.
Yeah, you mentioned it a little earlier. Try really hard to take advantage of the guys that aren't paying 100% attention. I know it sounds kind of snakish, but in the world of fantasy football, I mean, you got to be a snake sometimes. You got to kind of don't cheat. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I mean, sometimes you got to on some underhand tactics. Do what you got to do to get a guy here, there. I mean, it happens. I mean, you see some bonker trades go down all the time in fantasy that should not go down, and they end up working out the opposite of how you expected. So if you can take full advantage of anybody in your fantasy league, take full advantage of everybody in your fantasy league. So as always, trust yourself and trust the process.